Hi, I am NCR Davis, and I am the author of For the Boys, the War Story of a Combat Nurse in Patton's Third Army. Now, some of you who are watching this may have read this book. I'm hoping that there are a lot of you who have not, and you might need to know the story behind the story. And it is this. When my mother turned 90 years old, she gave me her war archives. And just to give you a little bit of a background, here is a volume of letters. Now, of course, they were not typed back when my mother was writing them in 1943, 44, and 45. She handwrote them all, but her mother was quite organized and saved all of the letters that my mother wrote home while she was in the service and decided to have them typed and bound in this big red volume. And there were some other archives too that I'll talk about later on another podcast, but just wanted to give you a little bit of background. There are some of the letters that are in this volume made it into the book, which is based on my mother's archives and interviews I did of her for 2 years from age 90 to 92. She was losing her short-term memory at the time, and she knew she was. And she said that I could interview her before she lost her long-term memory of the war. And so through research and 2 years of interviewing my mother, and along with her archives, which included this huge volume of letters, a service diary, and many photographs, 12 years later, this was the result. It was published by Casemate Publishers, which is a very large military history publisher in the United States and in the UK. And it was published last year, October 2023. Many people who have read this book since its publication, since its release, have been very interested in hearing the rest of the letters that my mother wrote that did not make it in the book. And so I decided, hey, why not just do a podcast and read the letters, at least most of them, to you on various episodes. And so that's what this first podcast is about. So, the first entry is from March 31st, 1943, and it was Mary E. Balster, my mother, her very first night in the Army. Now, she would be mortified if she knew that I was going to be reading these letters, particularly the first probably year and a half of letters, because she was embarrassed about her immaturity. But it was understandable. It was a very innocent time in American history and culture until we had to go to war. And Mary was a very sheltered, middle-class young woman who decided to join the war effort the day that Pearl Harbor was attacked. But she took a while before she let her parents know that she had made that decision. So, we open with her very first letter, March 31st, 1943. Here she is. And her first letter says, "Dearest family, it's 10:30 p.m., my first night in the Army, and everything's under control." Now let me explain that her first assignment was to report to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. That's where she would receive her training. She had a bachelor's degree in nursing from the University of Minnesota. She grew up in St. Paul, and she talked one of her dearest friends into joining the service with her at Fort Snelling in St. Paul, and they were assigned to report to Fort Leonard Wood. So here she is. She is now, let's see, what age would she be? She was born in 1920, so she's 23 years old at the time of this writing. Arrived here about 7:30, and by now have unpacked, put things in order, taken a shower, put up my hair, and have done lots of talking. Everyone's extremely pleasant, and we received a very warm welcome, including that from the weather. Not hot by any means, just nice. I'm glad we took the opportunity to take a look at St. Louis. Gosh knows when we'll see it again. From all reports, leaves are not too frequent, and transportation facilities are not too good outside the camp. There's a Red Cross car which carts the nurses around the camp, which is much larger than I had anticipated. The camp, I mean. Was telling you about St. Louis. I'm very excited and confused, so please forgive if this letter is not very well connected. We'll do better when I calm down. Saw those gardens Miss Camellia spoke of. Took a bus and a streetcar to get there, but it was worthwhile. They are beautiful. That new spring green is just beginning to appear here. Saw some real orchids too. Then back by bus to downtown St. Louis, where we ate lunch at the Forum, and back to the depot in time to catch the 2:15 train. My first impression of St. Louis was super, and we'll be looking forward to the time when I can get down there again, and I do mean down. Left Newburgh about 6 p.m. and drove up here in a government bus. The ride reminded me so much of the drive up to Mount Rainier. Not as scenic, perhaps, but it was uphill. We never stopped going up until we reached this place, which is really isolated. Nothing but hills for miles around. The closest town is Newburgh, which is about 30 miles down, and the Red Cross car brought us to our quarters, which are rustic but very well equipped. There are 5 nurses' houses with about 20 rooms in each house. Lorraine, that's her friend that she brought with her, is 2 houses up. Rooms are single. Mine is a corner one, so it has 2 windows. This is it. Now, I have to tell you, Mary at 90 years old, she'd forgotten that she had drawn this picture of her room at Fort Leonard Wood. And she said, "You see how juvenile I was?" Yeah, but that's okay. For posterity, I'm glad she did that. The furniture is all of dark brown metal and very nice. The walls and ceiling are like the inside of a cabin, but I'm very well pleased with the whole setup. There's a lounge, telephone, showers, bath, wash tubs, ironing boards, etc. in each house. The rest of my environment is still a mystery and looks very complicated. And Mother, do you remember saying that you thought you'd be sending something every week? How right you were. How would you like a small list right now? 1. 2 sheets and a pillow slip. The Army no longer furnishes them, and they are difficult to obtain here. I can't believe they didn't even furnish sheets. Yee. Throw in another washcloth and towel too if you can. 2. My cotton formal. There is a formal dance here every week, and the girls say it's a must-have. There are no bedspreads, curtains, dresser scarves, but those can wait until I know more what the score is. We may not receive our uniforms for a couple of months as everything is so slow about getting here. If you could take care of those first items, though, sure will make me happy. We'll meet the head nurse at 8 a.m. tomorrow, and I hope she's not as bad as her reputation. It's terrific. Terrific in those days meant terrible. Well, seeing as how I have other corresponding to do, guess to whom, better I should save the rest for later. Two things here. She was referring to her boyfriend, Clinton, who she had in St. Paul. He is stationed at this point in the letters in Boca. So she's saying to her parents that she has to write him. And that better I should is just a great saying. I don't know, somehow it fell out of the lexicon, but I think it's really cute. I've started saying it again. Better I should do this. Better I should do that. Anyway, have not had a chance to get homesick, but just give me a few days. Everyone was so wonderful to me before I left, and I hope they know how much I appreciated everything. Please don't worry about me. The Army has done a good job of taking care of us so far. But please write very often because I can see already how much those letters from home mean to everyone, and I'll try to do my best. My address, 2nd Lieutenant Mary E. Balster, ANC. ANC meant Army Nurse Corps. Station Hospital, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. Will be waiting anxiously to hear from you. Greet the kids for me, she means her sisters, and her friends. Tell them I will write tomorrow, if I can. All my love to you all, Mary. So that was a very innocent letter, and I think one of the things that occurred to me once I read the letters was how they were just a natural coming of age story. Because here's this 23-year-old, very patriotic woman, like everyone was in the early 1940s. And she is so gung-ho to do her part to help with the war effort. And you just see over time, and you'll see this if you get interested in hearing me read these letters, how she grows. She grows from being a little girl to a woman who finds herself in a war, right on the right behind the front lines in Europe. And you see the progression of that beautiful person just growing in front of you through these letters, and it's fascinating. So I hope you'll take this journey with me. One more thing before I close for today. I've decided that for each one of these episodes, the most incredible thing that has been happening since the release of For the Boys is the most gratifying experience that I've had meeting veterans as I've gone around the country to talk about this project and this work. Veterans are the most incredible people in this country, and they all have amazing stories, and they're so appreciative of this story, of my mother's service and her commitment to those boys and men during the European theater of war. And I just cannot say enough. So I've decided that for each one of these episodes, I'm going to dedicate the episode to a veteran, either posthumously or still living, because I've met so many along the way. But this very first episode, I want to dedicate to a veteran in our own family that he's no longer with us. His name was Major Thomas Broadstreet Isaac. And he was married to my sister, Mary Ann. And they fell in love at 14 years old when they met at church at a United Methodist Fellowship youth meeting in El Paso, Texas. And they got married after they both graduated from college. And he was on his way to Milton, Florida to begin training as a Marine Corps pilot. As many of you know who were in Vietnam, served in Vietnam, and probably also got exposure to Agent Orange. Our wonderful Tom was exposed to Agent Orange while he was serving in Vietnam, and in when he was evacuating people, and so he got cancer as a result of it, and we lost him a while back. And I just want to dedicate this first episode to an amazing, amazing man whom we all love very much in our family. He and Mary Ann had 5 children, and they have 13 grandchildren. And I just want to say, this one's for you, Tom.